Welcome back to the Stuff or Whatever podcast. This is your host, Brian, or Bikwanshi. And today I decided I wanted to make a little episode talking about video games and growing up gaming, kind of looking back, also sharing kind of games I played over the years, kind of what I play now. So it's kind of more storytelling and probably maybe relatable and stuff like that too. So I would say, honestly, I'm a big Nintendo boy. So I do play a lot of the Nintendo games like Super Mario, Legend of Zelda, Pokemon, and all that. But kind of like thinking about back in the day, I did grow up with other brothers and sisters, and we did kind of like when it came to birthdays and Christmas, we had added to our collection. So I felt like I was a little fortunate having a bigger library of video games. I would say we didn't have like something like really huge, or we didn't get all the latest games, but I would say that we kind of grew up with a good selection to keep us entertained. And we even had like our own like gaming wall over time. And sometimes I kind of wish that we kind of kept all of them or saved them. I know some people like to really play games in the old consoles, even though like a lot of them get ported over the years on whatever services or collections and things like that. But I think looking back, it's very nostalgic. Think about like having all these cartridges and switching them out. And I think a big part of that was my dad did work at a Toys R Us for a couple years. I'm not sure like the whole story, but I kind of felt like got a pretty good, like a lot of games we got weren't just from like birthdays or just from holidays and stuff like that. But it was kind of neat to have. Yeah, I just want to kind of like storytelling about that as well. So I would say, the Nintendo was like the first console. I remember, I think growing up, I'm thinking the Super NES came out pretty close to when I was starting a game, but I remember we did play a lot of Nintendo games. So I see like the original Legend of Zelda, Mario Brothers, and I feel like it never really beat the Nintendo Super Mario Brothers. And also the Mega Man games too. And then of course there's like Tetris and things like that. And even found like over the years like some good Nintendo games that I miss, like looking at things that like ported or on collection stuff like that, like Balloon Fight and Excite Bike, a lot of things like that too. Like how to call the kind of what games you missed out on, because obviously you can't play every video game out there. And I'm trying to think some horrible games that were out there. Starting with the NES, because remember there was like a Ninja Turtle game on the NES that was really bad. It was a Simpsons game we played as Bart that was really bad. Um, I just remembered. I think I'm pretty. Was it Super Nintendo NES? But I remember there was like a cartoon game based on Looney Tunes, and you can like put in little animations and like little speech bubbles. Like there was like a cartoon generator. I can't remember if it was Nintendo. It possibly could be Super Nintendo, but it kind of felt older now that I'm thinking about it. And also, I remember the light guns. The Duck Hunt was really fun on the Nintendo, so that's kind of really nostalgic too. I never got the Rob, and I remember seeing like videos of Rob. I don't recall if I was, seeing it at the time of being aware of it, but I kind of like when they introduced him in Smash and stuff like that, like, oh, that would be kind of neat to have as a kid. Besides my siblings, my mom did play a little bit of games. She does kind of play a little bit more now, but I remember Dr. Mario was her favorite. Um, I know she played Legend of Zelda too. I know she liked Legend of Zelda, only the first game, and also Space Invaders too. But I think those were a few games my mom played. But pretty much growing up, played with my brother. My younger brother's like 2 years younger than me, so it was one of those things that we were like the same age, so kind of like one of the ideal gaming partners to have, and all that. But I remember the weirdest thing with my younger brother is that he'll hold the controller upside down for the longest time, so he'll play games with the controller upside down. And I think he did it with the Nintendo and Super Nintendo controllers. I know the Super Nintendo had the shoulder, the L and R buttons, but I think when the N64 came out, obviously looking at that controller, that kind of changed his habit. And I'm guessing over time he would have, eventually played with a controller right set up with like how the PlayStation and Xbox controllers are now and all that. But that's like a fun quirky thing. I'm not sure anyone else had any like themselves or siblings or anyone they knew played with a controller upside down. Because I don't recall it ever being like a problem. Like it wasn't like mess about how he played the games or anything. But I thought that was the weirdest thing. is that he played games upside down. And then moving over, we did when it came back to after the Nintendo, we did have both the Super Nintendo and the Genesis, so we did have both consoles and got a pretty good releases as well. Of course, the Super Mario World was really awesome, and Yoshi Island, the sequel to that, and of course, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and also Final Fantasy II. I actually played, well, it's technically Final Fantasy IV, but Final Fantasy II, when it first came out for the US, was my first RPG game and one of my favorites. I actually played that quite a bit. And even the remake, so I think that's one of the Final Fantasies I played the most. And also, speaking of RPGs, the Super Mario RPG, which is one of my favorites, probably one of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time. Really wish that it would get ported. I know every time there's an update on Nintendo servers, when they have like the libraries of Super NES games, everyone complained that there's no Super Mario RPG or Earthbound, which Earthbound is a game I played a little bit, but I never completed. So maybe need to track that down and revisit that. And also, Chrono Trigger was a really, really good one. And then Final Fantasy III, which was released as, it was technically 6, was also a really good one. So speaking of RPGs. And of course, like other games for the Super NES I liked is Super Mario Kart. Everyone kind of like played that as well. And, there's your Super Metroid. That was a really good one. And I don't want to sound like too much that I'm just like repeating games, especially popular games that everyone knows about. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff with Super Nintendo. And I felt like some of the other obscure games, not that I really liked them, but I remember playing the Chester Cheeto game. There was some Looney Tune ones. There was one where the Roadrunner, I forget what that was called, but there was that one. And then I think it was when you played Daffy Duck as Duck Dodgers. I feel like there's a lot of licensing games, whether from cartoons or whatever. I remember speaking of cartoons, The Simpsons Bart Nightmare, which was kind of fun, but I know like some of it's like really hard, so I don't remember beating that. But it had some fun moments. And then also, what's called a Super Scope. That was really fun too. I think it came packed in with a game. I remember one of the games that would come out with it was Yoshi Safari, which is kind of like a rail shooter, first person. That was really fun one. And I think the one that was packed in, I think there was like a kind of like a robot fighting game where it's kind of like, like a first person shooter, but it kind of had like almost like a fighting aspect to it with robots. And it was cool, like some puzzle games too. It's something I have to look into, but it's one of those things I don't think it can really be ported or replicated. I would like to see if they could do like a port or something that's stays true to the original one. But there's that, and trying to think of any other last Super Nintendo games that really stand out. That, of course, like Star Fox was fun, but I don't think I really beat that as well. But a lot of good stuff, but I think there's a lot of stuff I miss. I know over the years, like if I follow some Let's Play channels or like the Super NES collection that they have on a Switch, like sometimes it's like games like, oh, I never heard of that one, and had fun with that. And then with the Genesis, of course, there's Sonic the Hedgehog, which is fun. I remember playing doing a debug and skipping levels, but I'd say Sonic 3 was one of my favorites, especially since it kind of had like a save option, so you don't have to worry about starting over every time you beat the game. And that's like one thing, like a lot of games had like a save option or at least had a password function, so you don't have to worry about it every time you started the game. You have to start from the beginning. And also I just thought back to Super Nintendo is the Mega Man X games. Those are really fun too. So I remember playing all those. And trying to think with Genesis, any other standouts. I feel like they have some really good collections now, like I think on Steam, and the one I think hit Switch as well, because I think other games I played, there was like Ristar and Echo the Dolphin, which kind of like one of those weird ones where I didn't get far on. The game I remember, it's like a McDonald's game, but you have like these super soakers, and it like kind of like you shoot out slime, or like I want to say like gladiators or something, but it's like a McDonald's game, but it's like one of those things like they say McDonald's, but it's not really a big part of the game except like Ronald McDonald shows up every now and then. There was a fun game called Kid Chameleon where you can like transform into stuff. That was a cool pinball one called Crew Ball. Oh, and Mutant League Football. I remember that was a fun one too. As well as like we had the Madden game and all that. And I'm trying to think. I know over when I don't know when it came out, but there was like Disk Drive, which I never really heard of or played of. But yeah, a lot of stuff went under the radars. I remember also getting some magazines and stuff like that. Usually Nintendo Power was the big one I was subscribed to. But I remember seeing like a lot of systems. I think like the Jaguar and the Saturn or stuff like that. It's like consoles that I never really heard of or played. I think they never really stuck too much. And then one thing I remember is growing up, there was like a video rental store that also did video games. Not a Blockbuster, but kind of similar to it. But I remember they actually had like a thing, like they had like an area where they had like TVs hooked up to different consoles. And I think if you spend like $5 an hour or something, you can play games or get to pick whatever game that they have. So instead of like renting it and taking it home, you'll just play the games there for an hour at a time. And I kind of wish that was something that really cool they brought back. I'm not sure if other places did that. I kind of felt like it was kind of like this place only did it. So I'm not sure if they did it elsewhere. Maybe it was like mom and pop kind of shops, but I thought that was kind of neat. I feel like I didn't do that too often or very rarely, but I thought that was kind of like a very fun concept is to have like consoles where you can just like play whatever game you want and things like that. And one thing I do see close of is that it seems like sometimes some barcades or stuff like that may have like a home entertainment system set up with like a console or whatever, and you can kind of play what games there. And I know like sometimes you worry about like theft and things like that, but I thought that was kind of cool back in the day to have a way to play whatever Super Nintendo games, kind of like an arcade, but you know you're actually playing console games. And when like people back in the day, kids that weren't as fortunate to really have the consoles or able to get new games on a regular basis, that would have been like really cool thinking about it too. So with the next gen, we of course had the N64, and we also got the Dreamcast, Xbox, and the PlayStation. Like I said, with having kind of other siblings and over time, kind of help add to our collection. I think the 64 was probably one of my favorites. Of course, it was Super Mario 64. Mario Kart 64 is a good one as well. And GoldenEye, I think that was a big thing too, like going up to slumber parties or birthday parties, like everyone had the console so they can bring their own controller and play split screens. I think some of those big games that were definitely multiplayer were fun, and kind of spend hours and hours of doing that at parties and stuff like that. I'm trying to think. I don't want to like list off like every big 64 game that everyone's heard of. But I know kind of like, I think which is one I rented was Quest 64, which was really disappointed. I think I tried to enjoy it a little bit, but that's kind of like an RPG because I felt like that area time is when things like a little weird in terms of RPGs, because I felt like that's when Square went to PlayStation, and Nintendo didn't really have too much in terms of those kind of games. But they had the platformers and other content. I remember quite a platform where Star Fox 64 was a really, really fun one. And then Dreamcast, I felt like that was one we didn't have too much of a library of. We of course had Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. I think we had that Power Stone fighting game. Oh, that's the console I believe that we had Marvel vs. Capcom 2. But I'm trying to think if we eventually got it for like Xbox. But if I remember correctly, Dreamcast was the one that had that. Let me look it up real quick. Okay, yes. So Marvel vs. Capcom 2 did get released on Dreamcast as well as the PlayStation and Xbox and all that. But for some reason, I feel like that, guys, I know growing up, we had like our bedrooms and then like the main family room we had a lot of consoles hooked up to. And I feel like that was the one that we played a lot. That was in the family room, but I remember that was an awesome game. I kind of haven't jumped too much into the other installments of that series, but I feel like nothing really compares to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And I believe the other ports, are still, pretty much the same. But yeah, I wonder if they would eventually like port that or re-release it or as legacy. I'm actually looking at the Wikipedia article, and I think got published. It got released in our Japanese arcades back in 2000, so that game's over 21 years old. But yeah, I don't know why nothing really compares to that. I know the first one was really good too, but I feel like that was one of my favorite fighting games of all time. And then also kind of a strange game that I liked for Dreamcast is the South Park, the Chef's Love Shack. And I feel as kids, a lot of that stuff went over our heads, although we did watch South Park a lot, but I kind of felt like that one stuck. Or it's not like the best game if you like watch videos about South Park games, but for some reason I just been liking the mini games, and then I would memorize the questions enough that I would answer them right away. And other than moving back to the PlayStation, that was a really fun one too. Um, I did play the Final Fantasies, the Final Fantasy 7, 8, and 9. And I have to say 9 is probably my favorite. I know everyone loves Final Fantasy 7 and 8. I bear through it. It's one of those games I kind of tried to revisit, and I felt like maybe I didn't appreciate some parts of it, but I feel like 7, 8, or well, 7 was a lot better, but I kind of felt like they strayed away from the Final Fantasy I grew up with when it came like to like swords and knights and kind of medieval. So that's why I probably like 9 a lot. And of course, going to other games that were big on PlayStation were your Crash Bandicoots and your Spyro the Dragons and Mega Man Legends as well. I did play and beat that game. And also, one kind of magical thing about the PlayStation is the demo disc. I remember getting some of the magazines and getting a demo disc, and you like play them, and some of them have just like videos or trailers. I remember that's where I played Metal Gear Solid for the first time, as they had a little demo for that, and I felt like that it's kind of like a product of its time. Like nothing really can replicate that in terms of that feel, because of course a lot of games have like demos you can download and play, but I kind of feel like having a demo disc and like just having a set collection was pretty cool. And also looking at PlayStation, like those games had the memory card was like the big thing you had to get to actually save your content, or else you just had to start from the beginning. So I kind of felt like the memory cards had that little magic to them, that almost sacred, that there's a big deal to have a memory card and choosing the blocks and stuff like that. Because I don't know, now they have like you can even save on like consoles or get different sized memory cards, but I kind of remember seeing like the little blocks and have like the icon that represents the game and things like that too. So I remember like having the memory cards were a big deal. And then you would get like a second one and make sure it's a different color, or I think they had like a little thing to put a label on it and all that. And then Xbox, I know I played Halo on that. I kind of felt like Xbox was one of those ones that I went too big into. I'm trying to think it. No, Conquest Bad Fur Day, that was on N64, I believe. But Xbox, I feel like some of the games that are available on all consoles and maybe got them there. Like, was it the Legacy of King? And Prince of Persia, I think I played those on the Xbox. I didn't really stick with the Xbox that much. I think my younger brother was more of that. But yeah, pretty much Xbox for me is just Halo. And then moving on from there were GameCube. I liked a lot, of course, Smash Bros. Mainly. Of course, 64 Smash Bros. Was a big one as well. But I feel like I think a lot of people argue that Melee is one of the best ones, and I liked it a lot. I've liked the series over time, so I kind of feel like the next title always steps it up. I know some people had the complaints, but I remember liking Melee a lot. I think that was the one that had like the events where you unlock new characters, or they had like the set scenarios. So I think the event mode was pretty fun on that. And there was Super Mario Sunshine, which was okay. Like I know some people kind of like really love it, some like it, and all that. And I'm trying to think, I don't think I really, as much as I liked Mario Kart, I don't think I played Double Dash much when it came out and eventually got around to it. Same thing with like Pikmin and other big games on um, GameCube. I did play Wind Waker when it roughly when it came out, so that was when I completed. And then PlayStation 2, I think that's another one that's, some titles kind of stick out. But I remember like really liking Final Fantasy X, even 10-2. I thought it was really good ones. And another series I thought about, I feel like it doesn't get enough praise, is Breath of Fire 3 is a big one. I like for the PlayStation, and I think 4 also, did 4 come on 2 or was it on the PlayStation? I'm pretty sure Breath of Fire 4 was also on the PlayStation. And I kind of wish they would, I think they maybe ported them over time, because I remember seeing like a PC in a store of Breath of Fire 4. I'm not sure if they really done much with that series. I remember playing Breath of Fire 5 on the PlayStation 2, and it's just like really different. Like they had a character's role kind of switch in the sense that the protagonist Ryu actually talked, and then Nina was very silent, and the gameplay was a lot different. But also had some like fun mechanics with the dragon transformation that you can kind of like nerf and cheese, and kind of fun to kind of speed run through it. So that was one that kind of stuck out. Of course, this kind of bleeds in from PlayStation to PlayStation 2. The Tony Hawk Pro Skater series was a really fun one, and I think that also introduced me to a lot of music and going on. When Guitar Hero came out, that introduced me to a lot of music too. So kind of eventually played other Guitar Hero games and Rock Band and all that. And then I think that at that point I didn't play Xbox 360, so I can't really comment anything on that. I know my brother played it, like he played like the Gears Wars and things like that, and the updated Halo games. But I think over time I just kind of drop off, because I think eventually it became a time that, growing up, and then it came to when you're actually buying the games and stuff like that, you kind of get more choosy, especially when you don't have that disposable income. And also kind of sidetracking to handhelds. Of course, there was a Game Boy, and we had like the basics like your Tetris, your Mario Land. And then I remember Pokemon came out. That was a big one. I remember playing Pokemon a lot. We did have the the Super Game Boy, which is a cartridge for the Super Nintendo that you can put your Game Boy games in. And that was really fun. And of course, and for N64, when it had the transfer pack, Pokemon Stadium, you can play the Pokemon titles in that game too. And then the Game Boy Color kind of bleeds into that. I feel like that, I'm not sure if people would actually consider that like a next gen for the Game Boy. Because I know they had next Pokemon games. I can't remember if the Pokemon trading card game was Game Boy or Game Boy Color, but I remember that was one I really liked too. And of course is the Game Boy Advance, and I'm trying to remember some games I really liked for that one. For some reason, I'm almost thinking about doing a podcast based on Pokemon too. But I remember not really jumping into third gens. I never really played those at the time. But yeah, like Game Boy Advance had a lot of good games. But God, I kind of wish I saved them, because some of them escapes me. I did remember playing the Kingdom Hearts game, Chain of Memories. That was really different because I played it on PlayStation as well. And then it had like the handheld, kind of like the spin-off that's kind of like connects it to the next game and story. I know people made videos about Kingdom Hearts and how it's convoluted, and how there's like 50 billion different games and handhelds on different systems that kind of adds a piece to the story. And then there's a Nintendo DS, and that was a really fun one as well. Because I think when the Nintendo DS, that's when I kind of got back to Pokemon. So I got Diamond and Pearl. Oh, I just Diamond. And even, I believe I got Black, but I also remember having a good fun Sudoku game for that. Oh, the Mario Kart one was really good for that one. I think, yeah, so, yeah, I know this becoming a podcast is just like listing games for whatever system, but I think when it came to that point, I kind of stopped playing as much games. I did get the Wii. I remember I had to eBay it, because, of course, you can get that when it released. But after we got like pretty much all the main titles for that over the years, like the Mario Galaxy. It was like the Wii Sports. I'm trying to think of the big ones that came out at the time, like Twilight Princess and Legend of Zelda and all that. I think one of the more obscure, maybe not well liked titles, I remember playing Mad World. That was a fun one. That's a little bit kind of like comic book style and kind of more violent and all that. And I remember the Rayman game, the Raven Rabbits, were pretty fun because it kind of felt like, I don't know, it kind of came out when the system came out, so it's almost like a tech demo kind of thing to see what you can do with all the motion controls and all that. And over time, I didn't really jump too much in like PlayStation 3 because it's one of the things when you're becoming more adult, moving out and all that, you can't have that much disposable budget. And I think down the road, like, kind of get back into it. Like, I know when Steam became more of a thing, getting games on Steam and Steam sales and stuff like that. And I'm also kind of guilty of playing games on emulators too. So kind of track down old games I haven't played, mostly like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, kind of era. I try to if the game's like more available, like a port, a legacy collection, or stuff like that. I like to play it more legitimately, but so I've been guilty of playing like older games like that on my computer when it wasn't released on my computer. A little segue about gaming is that a little story is that I actually went to school for college for video game design. It didn't really last that long, but I remember back in the day, we had that channel, the G4 TV, and it always advertised like gaming, and I thought it was cool, and I like games. Why not make it a career and stuff like that? Although I never felt like talented in terms of being an artist, so I thought programming or stuff like that. And I remember school was called Collins College. I think they actually shut down a long time ago. But we're thinking, okay, taking a chance and kind of jumped into that. And I think at that time, a lot of like tech schools were trying to get people out of college and stuff like that. And I did some classes that, kind of like general education. I know I got a little bit of C++ in terms like, because I know a little bit of how programming works, probably like barely the basics, but I remember also kind of had a media arts class and got to play around with like Photoshop and Premiere Pro, which kind of wish I still had. I kind of like those editing softwares and programs. I remember one, it's pretty much just like play video games in school kind of class. We just kind of fooled around. We played a lot of Smash on the Wii. I think we did like some game review, like writing and stuff like that too. But I feel like getting to the point that I it didn't feel like it was a thing that I can make work out as a career. I think also at that time is like when like the Wii, the Xbox, the PlayStation 3 are coming out, so kind of like felt like it was more focused on the latest console. And I felt like that was before the big boom of indie games. So I kind of felt like if it was a different time, a different situation, when there was more like indie games where they can be like more throwbacks, and it had to be like the most latest game engines and the latest like 3D and latest that. Use stuff that's kind of like more throwback, more 2D, or the sprite styles. So a lot of successful games like Shovel Knight is kind of a big one that comes to mind. It's it's not like the most graphical game, but I kind of wish if it was just a little bit later, I might have stuck with it a little bit more. I'm kind of curious about like some free programs or whatever that you kind of play around with and make games with. Like like some people do that as a hobby and stuff like that, but I don't think it would be anything that would become anything real in terms of actually making games and all that. And then thinking now, like in a I do have a Switch. Again, always liked the Nintendo games like Super Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild. Kind of curious how the next title is going to be. And sometimes I'm guilty of having like the game overload where I have a bunch of games that I need to catch up on. And I also get a bad habit of playing a few mobile games as well on my phone. And actually, it kind of limited down to two, but I really, really like Final Fantasy Record Keeper and Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. pretty fun. I'm not sure how long I'm going to play them as devoutly, but it's one of those things I can just like play it in bursts and stuff like that. But especially Final Fantasy Record Keeper is very like throwback to like the SNES era of Final Fantasy and all that. So I feel like also when it comes to mobile games, I know sometimes they can be like pay to play, and of course, a lot of games, they have those ways to make money. But I feel like those games do a pretty good, well balanced, where you can earn like login bonuses and stuff like that too, so you don't feel like too screwed over if you don't spend money in the game. So I feel like those are pretty good ones as well. I feel like I think I heard about it, like Final Fantasy All the Bravest. I heard that's a really, really bad one. That's kind of a more cash grab. But Record Keeper and Brave Extra is a really fun one. So if you want something that you're bored and want to play on your mobile devices, that's a good one. Non-sponsored or anything like that. And then kind of looking at my Steam catalog as well. I'm kind of like organizing stuff as well. Sometimes I think about like doing streams and things like that. If I'm gonna like play games, might as well stream it for the world and see, kind of if other people notice it or if it becomes more of a thing. Because I think that's one thing I get jealous of is when people can actually make gaming a career. I don't know, but like the competitive part, because I couldn't even dream back in the day as a kid that people would be playing games on teams and competitively to actually make a lot of money. But then, that's your Let's Players, your streamers and stuff like that too. Earn money through donations or ad revenue or things like that. So also one thing that was I get a little envious about. And some of my recent gaming habits is that I don't know if this is a little embarrassing, but I play a lot of Fortnite. But I feel like that's kind of dying down over time. I do kind of play Fortnite on a regular. Also, Rocket League is a really fun one too to kind of pick up to play. They're both epic games, but those are ones I kind of play a lot. But I almost feel like the point that I'm playing them too much. That when you play like non-progressive games, and you have other games that kind of build up. Because thinking just offhand on my Steam account, some games I need to complete. I'm playing through Danganronpa, and I still need to finish the third game. There's Lisa. Is it Lisa the Painful? I heard that's a really good one because I saw a YouTube video from Yurik Saldivar talking about that. So that's like one of my to-do lists. And I'm kind of curious to beat Final Fantasy. I'm sure if it's like Type 0 or Type O, but it's kind of really unique kind of take on the Final Fantasy series. That's kind of like has like all the members in like a class or academy and stuff like that too. Because that's what going back to Record Keeper, they kind of like exposed me to like the characters from other Final Fantasy games I haven't played. Which like most of I kind of avoided Final Fantasy 11 and 14 because the kind of frustrating part about that is that they kind of were MMOs, and I kind of intimidated by MMOs. I really like the idea, but I feel like it's kind of like one of those things that if you're going to pay monthly or invest financially, but not have the time to really pay, kind of like bleeding money or whatever. Going to back that, I just remembered. I remember back in PlayStation, my friend had these games, the dot hack games. There was 4 titles, and they kind of like go into each other. Like you can carry over your save file and things like that too. But so it kind of had like, if you're not familiar with the dot hack games or the anime series, it's like a virtual world MMO. But I thought it was kind of fun to kind of like simulate that into like an actual game, but kind of have that MMO kind of aspects to it. So that was kind of a fun series. I also did buy it on sale. There's like one on Steam. I think it was like some older games that made it select collection or something. So I might revisit the more recent titles for the dot hack games. Yeah, so I feel like I've kind of been rambling on enough. I feel kind of, I don't know, like I feel like there's a lot of people, like gamers on YouTube, or people who do a lot of gaming content that's more interesting or explain it better or things like that. So just kind of your average show talking about growing up with video games. And I did also want to kind of segue into this, that back in the day, I actually tried to do like the Let's Play kind of content for YouTube. I called it Be Quanchy Gaming. it was really nuts. I kind of like made it on a separate channel, and what I'm deciding to do, I'm actually taking a lot of those old videos. I'm going to upload them to this channel in the future. So I'm not sure what's going to become of that. Kind of more curious to see how they would perform than anything else. But yeah, so be on the lookout for that. I did make a video like explaining the reasoning behind it and kind of giving some background, but I am going to get some old gaming videos that I did and kind of consolidate and add to the channel and see what happens. So I think that's enough rambling by myself for today. So again, nothing like too incredible or anything like that, but interesting. I think a lot of people may have similar growing up with video games, and kind of fun to just think back and talk out loud, even if no one's really paying attention or noticing. But just something I just wanted to do for this little podcast for this week, and that'll do it. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, comment below. Know about whatever I talked about in this episode. If you play the same games, what consoles or generations really stood out to you, and all that. And I'll talk to y'all guys later. Bye.